Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 778th New Social Environment. I'm Eleanor, a Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the immense pleasure and privilege today of being your MC for a conversation featuring Emma Pildes, Tia Lessin, and Reverend Dr. Donna Schaper. We're also thrilled to welcome poet Cat Tyc here to close today's program. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter. Here in New York, we are on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation. We recognize land acknowledgements are not a replacement for necessary decolonial work, but serve as a reminder of place, of the legacies of dispossession and enslavement that sustain and enrich the stolen land we are speaking from. And now to introduce today's guests and host. Emmy-nominated filmmaker Emma Pildes has an extensive background in and boundless love for nonfiction storytelling. The Janes is Emma's directorial debut. As one of Pentimento Productions' principal producers, Emma produced Spielberg, Jane Fonda in 5 Acts, and Very Ralph, all for HBO Documentary Films. She is a member of the Directors Guild of America. Tia Lessin was nominated for an Academy Award for her work as a director and producer of the Hurricane Katrina survival story, Trouble the Water. She has also directed and produced Citizen Cook and The Janes. Lessin was a producer of Academy Award-winning Bowling for Columbine and the Grammy-winning No Direction Home, Bob Dylan, among others. She is a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and the Directors Guild of America. And community builder Reverend Dr. Donna Schaper served as senior minister of Judson Memorial Church from 2006 to 2021. As an elder, she is passionately concerned about leaving the next generation well prepared for all they have to face. She's written over 35 books, and we are so lucky to have her as an editor-at-large here at the Brooklyn Rail. And with that, it's my honor to pass it over to you, Donna.
All right, welcome everyone. We're so glad you're here. And I wanted you to know that the news has just broken that Roe v. Wade has been reinstated in the United States Constitution. We don't know how it happened. We think possibly they heard that we were getting together today to talk about what we were going to do if they didn't do something as important as that. And yes, I am kidding. And it's so close to April Fool's Day that I figured I had to give it a try. So instead of that being our reality is that we are without fundamental humanity. Men, women, and people of all kinds and genders need a restoration of our reproductive health, a reaffirmation of our central humanity, and a hope that we can all treat each other well, and especially treat future generations well, and love every child that decides to be born with full consent and happiness. So with that long prolegomena, I'm going to ask my two guests here today, Tia and Emma, and I'll start with Emma, to just say a word about why you made such a beautiful film called The Janes. Why did you do that? Emma, why?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Arcana, who's one of the producers on the film, started developing the film when Trump got into office.
Right.
I think the why was, very political for us. This, the antis got to work immediately after Roe, so it wasn't new what was going on. But when Trump got into office, it got sort of acutely scary in a new way, as did a lot of things.
Yep.
And Daniel saw the writing on the wall, and so did we.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, we had access to these women. I have a family connection to the story, and we felt a responsibility to, if we could give them a platform, to do so, that it was going to be of use to this country, to the world. So it was, it felt like a responsibility almost to contribute what we could to the fight.
Right. Oddly, it's a gift from Trump to get us to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I just want to say a quick word about that word political. It's often degraded to the lowest common denominator, as though there was nothing good about politics. But in my humble view, there is nothing outside of God's or the universe's purview. And that includes all things political, which might be considered sacred in their own way, properly construed. Tia, how about you? What was your why?
You know, I like to take hard things on, and this seemed like a hard story to tell, in that we wanted to make an entertaining film about abortion.
Yeah.
And we wanted to look at the past to really inform our future, what we all were facing, what we were going to be facing, as the Supreme Court heard this Dobbs decision. And I'm so glad we did. You know, we're in a public health emergency right now, and we are seeing the voices of the Janes and their spirit of resistance really explore what the possibilities are in terms of what we can do to fight back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I noticed in your bio that you love difficult subjects. You know, Katrina, that works. But yeah, why go away from danger? Why not go straight toward it like a good canoeer does? Go to the vortex, find out what's going on there, where the current's rough. So thank you for that. It's called Courage. Before we go on, why don't we just take a look at the trailer just to make sure that we bring the film into the room with us. We'll just give it another minute. We might be having some technical difficulty. And if we can't bring it in, we'll talk about it some more.
Yes, just give us a moment here. Apologies.
No problem.
We were ordinary women trying to save women's lives.
But we were criminals. We were felons. For most of the nation, in '72, abortion was illegal.
We had to go underground.
The woman would be given the address to the front.
It was probably obvious to neighbors what was going on.
We came to the surface from other things, the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement.
You couldn't not pay attention to what was going on.
Fetal death is murder.
You could not work as a pregnant woman. If you weren't married, you were out of luck.
They were terrible situations.
The septic abortion ward was full every day.
Women did awful things.
They were literally dying because they were women.
So we thought we can be of use. I said, we could use my phone, but change it so that they don't ask for Eleanor. How about Jane? Nobody's called Jane anymore.
We had the phone numbers on bulletin boards around Chicago. Pregnant, call Jane.
The clientele included daughters, wives, mistresses of police, state's attorney, judges.
It dawned on me how big an issue this was.
Jane was an outrageous undertaking by a lot of smart women.
I was not there to pass judgment.
I knew there were women like me.
Under the radar of the Chicago Mafia and police department.
We were all being watched.
The phone rings. A man says, "We know where you are."
There were 11 counts of conspiracy to commit abortion, 110 years for each of us. So that's a long time.
That might have ended Jane right then and there.
I couldn't see myself sitting on the sidelines.
We were building a new world, one woman at a time.
Sometimes you have to stand up to illegitimate authority, and sometimes there are unjust laws that need to be challenged.
Thank you. It was great to see some of my old friends. We all looked a lot younger then. We seem to have survived. So just let me say that I am honored to know myself as a Jane. I was a gatekeeper as a Jane and mostly did pre-procedure counseling and post-procedure counseling. So I sat in a lot of those living rooms as people went in and out. And I also sat in the basement of the University of Chicago chapel for a long time, where I was delighted to be arrested by the Chicago police, who had gotten a report that we were doing abortions in the basement of the chapel. And after they took 25 of us or so, including the women who had come for help, down to the precinct, about 3 hours later, we were released because they couldn't find any equipment. So thank God we were doing it in living rooms instead of in the basement of the hospital. There we were preparing people to take an airplane, something most of them had never done before, to New York to get a legal abortion and get back. The cost, including airfare, was $300, and we drove them ourselves to O'Hare. So big memories. Where are we now, people? What's going on with the film? What's it like to know that the film is getting a lot of attention? Who wants to start?
What is it like to know? I mean, I think, to go back to my previous answer, it feels gratifying to have made a meaningful contribution. You know, the timing, as I said, you know, we sort of saw the writing on the wall, but at the same time, we premiered on HBO this very same month that the Dobbs decision came down. So there was something celestial about the timing. And so that was very, you know, we had something we were doing in a moment where we felt so freaked out and out of control. And you know, that's activism. You're able to plug in and contribute and find yourself in the chaos of your rights being taken away. So we are grateful to have been able to share it, and we're also grateful that it existed, I think, for us.
Yeah, I thought the timing was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And celestial is the right word, because imagine if you were just starting on it when that happened, you know. So it's really having its moment. And the number of people who call me up and say, I haven't seen you for a long time, but hi, it's nice to see you there.
Good.
That's been really gratifying, is the right word. You got to feel good about something. Yes.
The film is helping us connect the dots between, you know, your generation and a younger generation that never lived through a time when abortion was illegal.
Right.
And, you know, we need to have this intergenerational dialogue, and we need to learn from our elders.
Yeah.
And, you know, your courage and your stubborn, you know, resistance, I think can be an example for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so we're really pleased that we've been able to open this conversation, normalize the conversation about abortion, which is usually sort of relegated to whispers and that we can engender this, as I said, this intergenerational dialogue that's taking place between, college age men and women and people who are just beginning their reproductive lives,
Right.
and making all sorts of decisions, and then you all. So we're just sort of a vehicle for that.
Yeah. And what was fascinating, even quote back then, was that many older women who were beyond the age of reproductivity or the age of having recreational sex turn into procreational sex by order of the government. It was really, I think our generation made a lot of mistakes. And we also had a lot of elders guiding us. And I do think the intergenerational piece is important. And it's probably more important to talk about sex in beautiful ways and reproductive health in beautiful ways, and to imagine a world where women and men have the same freedom. My favorite quote from the old days is, if men had babies, abortion would be a sacrament. Just make it normal to think about women as sexual beings instead of something that's wrong. I can't believe that's still with us, but it's right there, right on the table, state after state. Because why else would they be doing this to doctors and to medical procedures? Is there any other reason? Have you, in the process of doing this good work, what have you learned about that, about sex? Let's start there, and some other things, and politics, all the things you're not supposed to talk about.
I mean, I would just say that there, it is about punishing women for having sex, enjoying sex. And I think it's really clear now that we're on the verge of a judge in Amarillo, Texas, outlawing one of the two pills you need, to have a safe medication abortion. The procedure is still possible with the one pill, even if the second gets outlawed, but it's not as easy, and it's going to create more suffering. And I think that's exactly what the fundamentalist right would like, is for people, to suffer. And it's really about our ability to have autonomy over our own bodies. And I think that is quickly going by the wayside.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought religion into the conversation. I wanted to just do politics and sex, but let's add religion to the conflagration. I don't call them fundamentalists. I call them punishmentalists. And because I think that's the highest value, is punishing sin and making sure that self-righteousness prevails, which is so un-Jesus-like. It's not even funny. I mean, Jesus is the one who talked to prostitutes and probably got killed for doing it, and other things like that, for eating with people who weren't worthy. So the punishmentalism really keeps us from knowing anything gracious in the universe or from the divine. And that's really harder than being condemned for your sex, is being condemned for your awe and wonder and pleasure overall. So I like the word fundamental, as long as you don't put an ist on it. I want to know what is fundamental. And one of my gurus, a Protestant reformer named John Calvin, says that the purpose of life is to enjoy God and to praise God forever. And how can I do that if I don't have sex? Why would I leave that out as a form of praise?
Well, the religious piece of it was really, I mean, Tia and I didn't know about it, and it felt really important to include, because I think that is one of the, bill of goods that we've been sold, is that making people fearful of coming to their spiritual leaders for help. And there's so many communities who are led by spiritual leaders, and those are the community's the hearts of the community, is those places. And if the shame is so deep that they don't even approach their spiritual leaders, the places they would go for every other bit of support in their life, then that's taking a big piece away from them. So it's very effective that we've been made to think that that all religion is against abortion and against, reproductive freedom, and it's really just simply not the case. So it felt very important to include the clergy consultation service in there, and to explore that and question that, as Tia was saying, in the connectivity between back then and now, because we want people to know that they can go there and use those resources.
Yeah, and we kind of glossed over the word political, but if a Roman Catholic Church can hand out a voting card to 500 people at Mass on Sunday and tell them which candidate is anti-abortion, why can't I have the religious freedom to have an abortion in any state that I want to, as a Christian who believes, along with Jews? I mean, it's become much more widely known, thank God, but Jews understand abortion as a very good thing under certain circumstances. It's never considered a sin. Where Christians came up with that idea, that and the audacity of speaking for all Christians is so it's so insulting to people like me, who we call ourselves Christian progressives or Christian pluralists. I prefer the word Christian pluralists, because I'm not sure that everything is about the future. I think some things are about treasuring the goodness of the past too. So a pluralist respects the Roman Catholic position, respects the punishmentalist position, doesn't agree with it, but I'm not going to force somebody to have an abortion. But the idea that I would be forced to do something illegal in order to do something I felt was right for me is so undemocratic and frankly un-American. I don't understand why people don't see that this limits the limits on a religious choice, like I made when I had my abortions. I had two. I made a religious choice to have them before God. And it wasn't a political choice. It wasn't anything but a religious choice. So my freedom of religion has been so violated during this time. And that's why I love the Janes, because they were people who said, no, whatever everybody else says is not what I think. Amazing people. Heather Booth, who was just on, I don't know how well you all got to know her, but she's one of the most remarkable human beings there ever has been.
Well, and it, the truth is that the Catholics and evangelicals have hijacked the moral high ground. And what I love, Donna, about what you say in the film and what you did through the clergy consultation service is, you felt that you had a moral obligation, to save women's lives and to make sure that they didn't have to go through this punishment and this suffering, and they didn't have to do it alone. And, for those of you who haven't seen the film and don't know Donna's history, there were clergy consultation services in every state in the country. They were Jews and Christians, people of the cloth, who were volunteering their time to counsel women who came to them in desperation and fear. Many were suicidal. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. And so the clergy consultation service helped people who had, the ability to travel. Now, there were a lot of women who couldn't travel, and those women in Chicago were the clientele of the Janes. And as I understand it, Donna,
Yep.
The clergy consultation service referred those women they couldn't help to the Janes because the Janes could offer free or low cost, abortion care that was safe, albeit illegal. And so the two services worked in in partnership in some ways.
Yes, that's true. And, I would be very remiss not to name one of my predecessors at Judson, Howard Moody, who was the pastor at Judson for 35 years and was really the strongest leader among a group of very strong leaders, Spencer Parsons, who I worked with in Chicago then. Howard was a very unlikely feminist then. A crew cut, an ex-Marine, kind of a guy's guy. And one of the things I loved most about what he did, and by the way, I want to be very sure that everybody knows that my generation in the abortion fight was not as woke as it should have been about racism or classism in the movement. We just weren't. We didn't get it. We were kind of step-by-step people, and we saw what was in front of us impartially, to put it mildly. But one of the things Howard Moody did when abortion became legal in New York was to manage the cost of it. And there's fantastic correspondence between him and essentially the AMA in New York about what the price for an abortion should be. And they wanted to start with $350. And he said, no. And he didn't just say no, he said, you will not get any referrals from us unless it's $300. Because we at least knew that people couldn't even afford $300 for the most part. Mm. So one of the things we did was go walk around apartment buildings raising money for Jamie or Anna to do what she needed to do. And when Howard took that approach, there's also great correspondence about what is he doing, bargaining about a price for an abortion. It was exactly the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Exactly the right thing to do.
Yeah, that was a big part of the Janes too, is initially they promised volume in order to get the price down to a trusted practitioner. Exactly. Which is a strange way. It is a strange way to think about healthcare, which is what this is, but that's sort of the position you all had been put in.
And it is strange to think about any medical procedure in terms of money first. But when you get sick, what do you think about?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's really, the critical issue now, because as more and more states ban abortion, and let's be clear, a 6-week, so-called heartbeat bill is essentially an abortion ban, because, most people don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Or when you find out, it's too late.
That's
right. So as more and more states have banned abortion, there are now 13 states that have totally banned it. There are another dozen that are going to. The people that are going to be harmed the most are disproportionately low-income people, and those mostly disproportionately are people of color, are brown and Black women who are going to have to travel long distances just to get this very, very basic health care and get it delivered safely. And so it's just fundamentally unfair, because women of means have always had an ability to get this care. Not that it's any picnic to have to travel to Tijuana or to London or to, Japan to get, basic health care, but that was a possibility if they couldn't get their private physician to help them. Now it's sort of that on steroids. And it means that abortion care, safe abortion care will be the privilege of a wealthy few in this country. And that is also just fundamentally unfair. And it's going to force people to have children when they're not wanted pregnancies. People who are in battered relationships, they're going to be forced to stay in those relationships. It just, people who, they might not lose their lives, but they might lose their dreams, or they'll have to defer their dreams or their education or their plans in life, and I think it's just a disregard for fundamental, choice of what we can do with our lives.
So let's make a turn here and talk about what we think is going to happen. Where does your hope lie? And if you're despairing, we'll let people in the chat ask questions too. But what do you think is going to happen next?
I mean, I don't know, and I think some days I feel very hopeful, and some days not so much.
Right.
It's I mean, it's this. There's two sides of the coin. It's the same thing with the film itself. We wanted to make the film because we wanted to make clear, exactly what happens when this basic health care is restricted and made inaccessible to people. We wanted people to understand how many people will die, the fear, the isolation, all of those things, the septic abortion wards, all of that. We wanted to make that clear. But the other side of the coin is that we wanted to remind people of their own personal power to affect change, and remind people that I mean, the Janes vehemently don't allow us to call them heroes, because they feel that if they are called heroes, it will make other people think that they aren't exceptional enough to do activism and to do what they did. They want people to understand that we always have the option to be decent to one another. And so that both of those messages were really important to us to communicate and contribute. And both of those messages are present in the news cycle today and day to day. And Tia and I have both very hopeful conversations and very tearful conversations. Both things are true. And, I think we have to take it one day at a time and do what we can to resist.
Yep. How do you think the pill issue is going to frame itself? I mean, I know people are stockpiling pills. I know that another version of a Jane is getting a hold of a lot of pills and distributing. I know that there are underground things going on. And I know that there are some really extraordinary matters of bravery among doctors who are doing things that really could make things very bad for them, professionally and long haul. But there's something about the continuum between contraception and the threat to contraception, which I think is almost absurdist. I mean, every time somebody starts talking about that, I feel like I'm in a bad movie. I'm in a really bad movie, making Margaret Atwood look like a fairy tale, I mean, contraception. So every sperm has to get hooked up to every egg. Really?
No, I mean, Alito made that very clear in the dissent, that in the decision around Dobbs, that it is open season on contraception, on marriage equality, on the sodomy laws. I mean, it's all open season because all those hinge on privacy rights. And I mean, look, there is, this pill is pretty great in that, you don't have to go to a location necessarily to have a procedure. More than 50% of all abortions are induced by this pill or these two pills in combination. But, for those who would like to have the procedure, to be able to complete it, right then and there, they won't have that option. The abortion pills, one without the other, it's only 85% effective. So, but it also means that people who are having intended pregnancies, who need healthcare who have miscarriages, for example, or complications, won't in certain states have the ability to get the full range of healthcare that they might need to save their lives. And we're already seeing that happen. We're seeing women in Texas and Oklahoma and other places being denied proper treatment when they've had miscarriages, which is a pretty common occurrence in pregnancy. And when you have a miscarriage, you need help. You need essentially it's an abortion. You get the miscarriage completed in a hospital or in a clinic. And if you don't get that, you could bleed out. There could be serious and fatal consequences. And so let's be clear, we're not only talking about the inability to terminate unwanted pregnancies, we're also talking about getting proper health care, for a whole spectrum of reproductive care. So I don't think the pill is going to, I think some pharmacists are reluctant to even dispense the pill in states where the pill is still legal. It's not going to solve all the problems. It is something, but we'll see how long we can hold on to that. PlanC.org is a great resource if you want to hear more about Plan C and what are the efforts underway. There are people raising money to get these pills, to stockpile them, to distribute them. And right now, there are many places where that can happen legally. You don't have to break the law. In days or weeks to come, we might be breaking the law, once this judge rules in Amarillo. But until then,
you have to hope for sanity before you engage in civil disobedience. I mean, and one of the things that, I don't know, maybe it's not just folk wisdom, but we always, there's a story about Margaret Sanger on the steps of the Judson Church in 1925, and I hope I can get it right. I'm pretty sure it was 25, where she basically informed the Attorney General that she was going to distribute birth control pills to people before it was legal. And I think she did it exactly right. And whether it's folklore, what piece of it is folklore, that's another question. But I think it's more true than not that when you distribute a pill that you stockpiled from someplace in a state where it's not allowed, you're going to have to do it with the authorities knowing as opposed to furtive, because I don't think there are many secrets left. And there are too many cheats and liars running around who would be glad to set you up for failure. So I think it needs to be civil disobedience with its honesty face on. So, we talked before the show about what did I think? I think that, getting as many grandmothers as possible, handing out pills to as many people as possible is the right thing to do in public, on camera, and then figuring out how long they can keep people tied up, because of the utter absurdity and ludicrousness of not allowing a person a pill. In fact, I was thinking the pharmaceuticals ought to get involved. They have so much money to make and so much money to lose. I mean, even look at the Narcan, but let's not go off into another subject, but it's very interesting that Narcan could happen. But
these laws are intended to terrorize us. They're intended to keep us, from, doing the deed, thinking the thoughts. And so I love your idea of grandmothers, resisting. And frankly, doctors as well. I mean,
it's not my idea. There's lots of people inviting me to do it as a grandmother, so it's not mine.
Well, look, they're medical, doctors may lose medical licenses. They may serve jail time. They're talking about criminalizing people who seek abortions, not just the people who help them obtain one. And that's, you know, stunning. Even in the pre-Roe era, women were not criminalized for getting abortions. They might have been threatened, they might have been extorted. The cops might have tried to use them, you know, to get information about who and, you know, gave them the care, but they weren't put behind bars. And, you know, it's even worse in Oklahoma and some other states. Women are being criminalized or being put away for losing pregnancies due to potentially due to drug use. Maybe just due to garden variety miscarriage, but they're being charged with not just child endangerment, but with manslaughter.
Right.
This is where we're at.
It's a big charge, and it's real. I mean, I read along in these things and say, well, this cannot possibly be true. Somebody made this up. And then I'll even ask saner people than I am to check it out, and it is true. So there's a moment around, I think there's a psychological and spiritual moment where you stop denying the level of absurdity and or evil, take your pick, and kind of walk into it. And it's very hard to do that. It's very, very hard to do that. I don't want to get rid of my denial. It's painful. It's very painful. So we're going to, Eleanor, let's see, what do we have in the chat? We haven't looked there for a while, or I haven't. So the question is, what shall we do? What's the best strategy? And while you're going to setting me up for the questions and the panelists too, let me just say that we have to win elections. We have to win elections. So it's not always the drama of civil disobedience. I mean, we have to get the, what is it, 75 or 80% of the public that believes in a reproductive justice to vote, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we get that question a lot about, you know, are you getting this film out to people and changing people's minds with it, or are you just preaching to the choir? And, you know, we're happy to just preach to the choir because the choir is the vast majority of this country. It's about reminding people that we are not in the position that we have been in, unfortunately, for the last 50 years. And now we have to take action. We don't have to change hearts and minds on this issue. We have the majority. We just have to get out there, whatever get out there means. Certainly vote. Certainly civil disobedience if you're in a position where you can do that. Not everybody is. Make a film, participate in a Q&A online, speak to your elders, talk about your own personal abortion stories if you feel comfortable doing that, because part of this is that, they're keeping us quiet and in position through shame. That's worked very well for them. We aren't going to join hands if we don't know that we all actually agree and that we don't feel shame about receiving health care or having sex or, whatever the case may be. So I think all of these things are important. It's a very multi-pronged thing, and all of them can really affect a profound amount of change.
Let's talk about that for 1 second. Somebody said, so why, when you were 22, did you become a Jane? And I laughed and said, peer pressure. Right? I mean, that's what it really was. My friends were doing it, and they said, you should be doing it. And we did it together. And I think you know how you often act before you think, or you act your way into thinking? Then I was able to develop a point of view on the subject. But I think we all have peer pressure. We all have peers. And there is a way that we group think. And why not use it? You know, why not make it a topic of conversation? So there's something about politeness that is in our way of talking to our peers. I even find myself saying, well, I don't know how you feel about abortion, but I feel a need to tell you that I'm talking to a woman who had a miscarriage in Texas and is having a really hard time getting help right now, you know, and then she's willing to talk to me about that, but she said, I don't like abortion. I'm not in favor of it. And I said, well, are you not in favor of it for you or for everybody? And she said, oh, it's just for me. I'd never do that to everybody. Which strikes me as the normal pattern of these conversations, if you can get to have them.
Yeah.
Eleanor, what do you think? What do we have in the chat?
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat, but first I just want to say thank you so much for this amazing dialogue. It's been really an honor to hear from all of you, and I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared. So yeah, just thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Our first question will be from our friend GE, and Chloe is going to ask on his behalf.
Okay, good.
Hi, everybody. GE is asking a question from the public library, so I'm going to ask on his behalf. How do we recreate a fusion that structure? How do we recreate a fusion the structures of spirituality, political action, and medical care to move forward to fight for abortion and reproductive rights? Fusion of the structures of those things.
I think Donna maybe is best equipped to answer that one.
So I would think of it strategically and say, who would you want to start the conversation? Would you like the medical people to start the conversation and get the rest of us involved? Or would you like us to start addressing the medical people? I am sure medical people don't like any vein that opens that limits their freedom to do their job. I mean, I can't imagine that doctors want to be told how to doctor. So that fusion, or what I suppose some people might call it intersectionality, how do you get people working together? Somebody's got to take the lead on the conversation. And I think everybody is doing the kind of Marx Brothers act, you know, after you. Oh, you go first. You go first. I say we start fighting for who goes first before healthcare becomes even a more absurdist 1984 Orwellian system than it already is.
You know, we're showing the Janes in churches and synagogues and houses of faith. And we're also showing it for groups like Medical Students for Choice. Nice. You know, on college campuses. We're trying to build those relationships and those alliances, you know, through the audiences of the film. And so if anyone out there is interested in booking the film for their community, either their faith-based group or their campus group, you can sign up on the website, thejanesfilm.com, and you can make a request and we can try to bring it to your community, because I think there's nothing like a film that can engage people in conversation, and hopefully, you know, folks will take it from there and into action and into activism and into resistance. You know, we can start the conversation. We can't finish it.
Right.
Thank you so much, GE, for that question. And thank you for those awesome answers. The next question will be from Ty.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for this conversation today and for the work that you're doing. It's been really lovely to listen in. I also was, thinking, Donna, about what you were saying of everyone fighting to put everyone else first, and like they're afraid to start the conversation. I was just thinking about, you know, when you're like in a like a medical emergency and you need someone to call 911, you have to like point at someone and say like, you have to call 911, right? And so it's like this thing of like assigning someone to do it. But I was also just, I was wondering, you talked a little bit about being okay with preaching to the choir because the choir is so large. And I wanted to know if, you know, when you all were making the film, who your target audience was, and whether you were embarking upon it knowing that that was going to be kind of the situation, or what that process was like.
I mean, I'll just say that I don't really make a film for an audience as much as I just make it for myself. You know, a film that I kind of would want to watch on a Friday night and that keeps me guessing, keeps me, you know, but is a gateway into the emotions of real people. That's what we really tried to do is to bring people into the lived experiences of these women, mostly women, and what was happening in that time. Would be my answer. Emma, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a filmmaking question. I think it can be hazardous to be thinking about who's watching the film, you know, as you're making it. You know, it's as with anything, the journey, the process, the processing, you know, Tia and I working together in sisterhood and in partnership of trying to, you know, create the most truthful, honest portrait of these women. You know, I mean, it's a huge responsibility, documentary filmmaking, in that people are entrusting you to tell their story, and we take that very seriously. So that was our focus, and it was, as I said at the beginning, it was a political in its way decision to focus on making this film. It felt important politically, but you know, but we wanted to make something that people would watch, and we wanted to do our craft, and so that was the focus. That was where we were coming from with it, and you know, hopefully what the end result of that is something that other people want to watch, and something that moves other people.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And what you both have said is the aesthetic answer to, I do it for it. I mean, I wouldn't still be an activist after all my failures. You know, I mean, I just wouldn't be an activist anymore if I was counting on how many audiences I reached. Or how much justice has been implemented. I do fundamentally think things are improving, while at the same time they are de-evolving. Devolving. I really feel the species is devolving, because how else would people have these really important conversations and not get up in the morning and sit in at their congresspersons or the Supreme Court? You know, why would you do anything else? But it's when you take organizing into a results-oriented frame, you're just mimicking the bullshit of a results orientation. So I think what I loved about the film was it was just ordinary people. They were not heroic. And if you spend any time reading scripture, which many of us do, and I do professionally, those people whom God entrusted the universe with were really a bunch of failures and losers. They were not the best and the brightest. They were people who were just ordinary people, and those women who were Janes are absolutely right not to take the heroic path. because that doesn't help other people move into being their own best friend. So I think mission accomplished. I really do.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Ty, for that question, and for those amazing answers, all of you. I would like to ask a question next. I'm curious about kind of what brought you to this topic, Tia and Emma, and Donna, actually, and what, yeah, like why did you feel that you were meant to do this project? And I know this was touched on, but I would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, do you have a...
I mean, I guess for long before I was a filmmaker, I was an activist, and I was, among other things, an abortion rights activist. And as Emma said, you know, the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs wasn't the beginning of the onslaught. It was really the end. I mean, the onslaught against abortion rights after Roe began with the Hyde Amendment, when money was taken away from poor people. There was an end of Medicaid funding of abortions, and you couldn't use public facilities for abortion care. And it got to the point in 2021, it was a banner year for anti-abortion legislation throughout the country. So, you know, I was in the streets, you know, in the 80s. In 1989, I was arrested in front of the Supreme Court when a case was heard to prohibit abortions in public facilities. And of course, we lost that. But people were in the streets, and people have been in the streets. And I guess I am with you, Donna. I'm surprised that we don't see more people in the streets right now, although we did see a pretty extraordinary turnout for the referendum in Kansas and Michigan. And, you know, anytime that this is put up for a vote, you know, we win. Right. That's why you might see a lot of these referendum laws being chiseled away at by the right wing in this country, because they don't want people to vote. But so, I mean, anyway, I had a passion. You know, this is just a basic fundamental civil right as far as I could, you know, see, and it's connected to all sorts of other rights of citizenship. And so, you know, the films that I've made, you know, always I come at it through a passion and through a desire to tell people's stories that don't get told, in particular women's stories. And I'm drawn to that. I'm drawn to stories of resistance. And there just was the right constellation of subject matter, of characters, and it was the right story at the right time. So that got me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I already said it's peer pressure. I want to be where the cool kids are.
I mean, I don't know that I have much to add. I mean, I sort of said that you know, the Trump of it all, and you know, I mean, I will reinforce one of the things that Tia just said, which was very important to both of us, which is, you know, telling women's history. Women's history doesn't get told worldwide as much as it should, and certainly not in this country. And you know, what we're often left with is the single male hero's journey, and that those are the stories that get told. And you know, women's history, stories of collective action, stories of female collective action certainly don't get told. And we wanted these women, including Donna, to get their due around all of this. And we also, it's about shifting the paradigm too. It's about letting people feel part of it, so they're reminded that they have, again, that they have personal power, that they're part of this whole thing, and that they can that they can speak up and be heard and be, recognized. So that felt very good, I think, to Tia and I to be able to tell some women's history for once. Yeah.
All right. Well, we did what we said we were going to do. We told some women's history. We told a really good story. We experienced a little, oh my God, what are we going to do next? And I guess that's where we are. And I just want to thank you and your whole team for doing this. It's such a neglected story, and it's such a beautiful story. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, Donna. Thank you for your work back then, and thank you for being willing to sit for our cameras and tell the story. It's very powerful.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. We do have one last question from Fong, so I'll turn it over to you, Fong.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. Thank you so much, Donna. It's not so much a question. It's just the thinking that I've been sort of brewing for the longest time as to why, when Women's March happened after the Trump election was so momentous, and then later Black Lives Matter. And it's exactly to your point earlier too, Emma and Tia, is that we tried so hard at the Rail to bring them together, and we failed. It's unlike what happened in the 60s. So when Trump came on television, March 16 was Monday, March 16, 2020, and he deployed that term that we hated so much, social distancing. And that is the most manipulated term that I ever heard. And exactly why the next day we launched our Zoom, our daily social environment lunchtime conversation, as you are on now. We've done now 781 episodes. Today's counting. And I think that's the key, is how to, in some way, to mobilize technology for our own advantage, not to be afraid of the coldness and the speed with which it can really mobilize, because we know that radio was the tool for Hitler. When Joseph Goebbels asked Hitler to make cheap radio, millions of them, and give it away to every household so that carry the message quickly, I realized no more, no less than what Trump was good at with Twitter. So it is in this very format that is essential that we mindful of it. But in thinking about the brief political history of how journals and other voices, dissenting voice, got across. I mean, I can't help but think of the Dial magazine, one of my favorite magazines. It was created in 1840 by Emerson and Margaret Fuller. It was first a platform from which transcendentalist philosophers, poets, political activists can really publish their dissenting voices. As Donna had just brought up civil disobedience, you remember that was written really right after the year that Toro were put in jail for not paying tax in Concord, Massachusetts, knowing tax will be spent supporting the war in Mexico and the internalization of slavery. And civil disobedience, some point he say, I'm paraphrasing, every now and then we must rise up to be counter frictions against the machine. So the machine is cold and manipulative. And as Helen Keller once say, we can do anything we want if we stick together long enough. So I always felt cosmically optimistic, as I do remember Mark Twain also say similarly. He say loyalty to the country always, loyalty to the government when it deserves it. So I think the way to do it is to be fearless and to know how to deploy technology and to be selfless also is important. But I appreciate Donna having said that peer pressure is important, which means you have to hang around cool, intelligent people to feel the right peer pressure.
That's right.
So thank you so much. I feel so nurtured and optimistic about this gathering. And please stay in touch and please keep up your great work. We need you. We need to be together.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful, inspirational speech. And I just want to say, and you know, resistance can be fun. We saw the Janes, you know, they had fun. They knew it was a serious thing that they were undertaking, but they had fun with each other doing it. And that's because, you know, it can be damaging to the spirit to just acquiesce. Yes. And we can build spiritual reserves and have fun and resist. So thanks for that. In the spirit of the Janes.
Girls just want to have fun.
Ooh, it's super true. Now we'll get back to you, Eleanor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fong. That was such a great note to end on. We do have a tradition here at the Rail of ending our community events with a poetry reading. And today I'm thrilled to welcome our Poet Laureate of the Day, Cat Tyc, to the stage. Cat Tyc is an interdisciplinary writer and artist who has 3 chapbooks, most recently I Am Because My Little Dog Knows Me. Her most recent writing has been published in Maggot Brain, The Recluse, and elsewhere. She has directed music videos, and her first solo exhibition, Significant Otherness, was presented at Tanya Gronart Gallery in 2022. She teaches writing at the School of Visual Arts and lives in Hudson. Thank you so much for being here, Kat. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for that introduction. I'm getting that horrible notice that my internet is unstable. So keep me posted if I'm freezing up. But I do have a poem before, so I'll read that one. And if the tech is bad, then I will not do the piece with the video. I thought a bit, thank you so much for having me be part of this really important conversation. When I was thinking about what to present, I was just thinking a lot about the affect of losing one's agency to one's body. So that's kind of where my head was at in kind of making these selections. This first piece I'll read is called The Romance Myth. To think of Gertrude Stein's idea of continuous present in the literal makes me think of the time that my friend asked me if I would cry when he would die. And I said yes, and that made him smile. I see the beauty in the evaporation. It leaves a clear vapor that lets all we have bypassed into the picture. The pain is ripe but necessary. Looking down the barrel of winter, the pain is ripe, but now there is hate for my heart. The worst thing I know, it is true. Not much has changed from last year to now, but the same emotional reservoir of grief exacerbated from a few to all. And I miss being alive, but I'm not sure I ever was. So you buy yourself some happy, and we do it anyway. A candle and a sweater, something bougie, salty, sweet. This is how we give an exterior destiny to the interior being. And I'm so bored with this being the only collaboration. The people who created Zoom might be shepherds of the devil, promoting false connection, but family formation is a base for control too. And this is how you lose your object, because you assume the historical present is inside you, and you assume the present is what we do together. So we assume we can free ourselves from the burden of others. The inconvenience of others' people's convenience is the new receptivity. But what if we collectively learn to reframe the compliment? And what if we communicate to others on orientation towards what is secret? So all we communicate becomes a clarifying agent. And I see you, in truth, so confident and no longer conquered by your fear. I want to ask you, who do you actually want to let in? Because your infrastructure has to be generative. So loosen your object, maybe disassociate if you like, but dismantle the placeholder. Maybe this is an idea of living to the limit, counting off days like almonds because they cannot be scaled by optimism or object. We transform by people building together, and the present is now, and now, and now. Now, who is we? A competing presence, the impossibility to even be a we. Everything we engender is a placeholder for right now. The questions bring us together. So what do we do with the question? This is the sentimental circle and the flow of effective oppressions. Lauren Berlant says we are living in a moment where people want to balladize the injury. This is the song of the romantic sublime. And how long does being overwhelmed shatter you? So loosen your objects. It is okay if you lose it. Just become a fragment. This is an opportunity to remake it into a kind of geological optimism, because in capitalism, you think your objects are an articulation of you, and the hook is really a repetition of you. And the attachment drive is what brings us into the world. And we want to be in the world because we just want to be near our objects. But we have to pay attention to what we do in the face of the nefarious things they do. Fred Moten said this once, and I think about it all of the time. I mean, now that we all live on screen, does this mean we all have to give in and be the narcissists we always knew we could be? Now, the back of my brain might be the videographer, and your eyes are the lens. So, do I feel compelled to share more or hide completely? And I will never forget the picture you made of my life with you. Now, I am a product of my own dreams and nobody else is present. So this is the end is the sun, and her smile, my smile, will always be a ghost. Am I cutting out at all? I just want to make sure that you can hear me.
Cat, your sound is great.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to do a share screen. All right. So this next piece, you're gonna watch me do the whole tech of it all, is an excerpt from a video performance I did called Endurance Training, which was kind of thinking about the section in a documentary about Katy Perry, the pop singer. And the 2 seconds that I was obsessed with was, well, it doesn't really matter what was happening in the film. I think and it appears in this excerpt, and it's not really what this monologue is about, but it was once again about kind of losing agency to one's body and rising up from it, which I think speaks to a lot of what we were talking about today. Now, trick of timing, here we go. 44 days ago, I had my last beer, last cup of coffee, last burrito, last walk around the block. In 64 days, whatever is left of me can go home. My body is the filling to an imprint on my bed that roughly outlines what one could say was once the shape of a body that could have been mine at one time. Now the imprint represents the length and width of me. I'm on a regimented sleep schedule, lights out at 10 p.m., lights on at 6 a.m. No napping allowed during the day, which is one of the cruelest jokes of being stuck in bed all day, not being able to nap. The door to my room is always open, so if I have a serious or difficult conversation on the phone, certainly the nurses can hear everything. I have a bedside table where I keep a lot of my things. There is a bracket which holds my laptop. I clamp my laptop in and it looms over my head like an astral being. I am lying on my back and looking up at my laptop screen, but after several hours of holding up my arms up in the air, they get sore after a while. It takes a lot out of me reaching towards it to make connection, phoning home like ET. I have to take breaks to stretch out my arms and muscles, occasionally chastised by the doctors for aiding in my own atrophy. Sorry, I'm a little ahead of my video. In the other day's news, a shooter held hostages in a Planned Parenthood in Colorado. According to the police scanner, the Colorado Springs Planned Parenthood shooter is a white male about 6 feet tall, about the white beard, wearing a flak jacket and a hunting hat. No one's surprised at all by the description. Headaches and back pains were what they warned me would happen. The spine is not used to laying horizontal for this long. The blood flows up, putting pressure on the skull. Several pop stars have died in the past week, and it feels like parts of myself have passed away. The collective mourn resonates, makes them feel missed. I'm allowed 30 minutes to put myself up on my hands and elbows, and I take it to indulge in an aimless top of the pops watching. I'm allowed to extend my arms above my head, keeping my elbows all the way out and keeping my head up. I'm not allowed to bring my elbow directly below my head and hold myself up further. Here, they are super strict with regulations. The confused rush of blood feels like an internal weeping. I'm cold, but still aware I'm alive. My mother calls to talk about one particular pop star. She's absolutely devastated. Cancer, she says. Just cancer. When I first got here, I spent 5 days on my side, curled in a fetal position to reshift the pain. When I tweeted about my abortion, I was primed as troll bait, but that's nothing. Here, I'm allowed to disintegrate. It's totally acceptable. A pop star can reverberate. A pop star is the state of being we didn't know we were capable of knowing. They warn me that when I stand up, it will be hard. I will probably faint, lose consciousness. The blood will move too fast. After 70 days, I will have lost 20% of my blood volume, but who's to say it hasn't been worth it, despite how difficult it is for the spine to deal with all the pressure of the organs while lying down. Thank you. I got a little ahead of myself on that one, but that's all I got.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Kat. That was a really nice way to end. And thank you again so much to Emma, Tia, and Donna. We would also like to thank the Terra Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program to make these daily conversations possible and for supporting our archive, which you can view on the YouTube channel. For the past 22 years, the Brooklyn Rail has provided a platform for the arts, culture, and politics through our monthly publication and public events like here in our daily NSE. Please check the chat for a link to donate and support the Rail. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Every Ocean Hughes and Ksenia M. Soboliva on the event of Every Ocean Hughes A Live Side at the Whitney. We'll conclude tomorrow with a poetry reading by Janetta Rich. And you can now all turn on your microphones to say hello and goodbye as you leave. And thank you so much for being here, everyone. This was amazing.
Goodbye. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the reading, Kat. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you.